yeah, papa. Mate. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Baby mate. I want more people dancing. We need more people dancing. Let's do this together. I Hey, quiet. Connect John. What you want, sorry? Me pay them line. Miss Obisi, oh, ouch, who nyamina dumda? Ebe neza nyamina dumarakwa guide you nyamia yamao nafa nasib yebetwe beneza neza nyami nadumarakwa. Sing with me if you have a better voice. Guide you nyamia yamau nafanasi manu. Shall we applaud the choir, ladies and gentlemen? Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite at this point Mr. Charles Zwenis to do us the honors of the review. As I mentioned earlier, I have two books, but he'll do a review of one. And we have The Dreamer, and we have Komla Dumor and his elements. Charles, you're doing The Dreamer, right? Please welcome Mr. Charles Zwenis.
I never thought I'd be here doing this for my dear friend, my beloved brother, Komla Dumor. The dreamer Komla Dumor, the boss player, in his own words. A book about my friend, written by my friend, and compiled by his father. Uncle, thank you for immortalizing my dear brother. I have been warned by Charles Mensa already to resist my leanings as a lawyer and talk long. So I'm going to try my best. He hasn't injuncted me, however, from a spot of mischief, which I shall direct at him. Komla was the boss player, but he was also the boss player with an A. Playa, not ER, player. He was boss player by day and boss player with Charles Mensa by night. Those were in the good old days of single life, I might point out. And since he was such a great disc jockey on the mics, on the wheels of steel at Joy FM, there was an entire Komla speak type of jargon which developed around music and Ghanaian pidgin and catchphrases that pointed to the rascality committed as player with Charles Mensa and a few others who I shall not mention. I confess that even I got to know the boss player, but from a distance. I kept a very safe distance. Charles Mensa, for instance, was a victim of Komla's mischievous jargon because he was given a very colorful name. We stopped calling him Charles Mensa because Komla always used to say, Ejewa. And of course, another word that springs to mind, a noun that was always used to signify a verb, was the name of this very hotel, Kempinski. Kempinski, in Komla speak, was a verb. It was an active doing word. It wasn't the name of a place. In fact, in those days, the Kempinski didn't exist. This book is a compilation of Komla's experiences, both as a professional, as a boss player, and as a man of colorful life and endearment, as a friend of the people, as a compassionate person, and as a socialite. We've all had friends in our lives who remind us that we are all special, but there are always those exceptional ones. You come across a friend who is taller than you, runs faster than you, is quicker on the draw than you, speaks more eloquently. Mine came in the form of Komla Dumor. And I was fortunate to learn a great deal from him and to respect what he stood for. First and foremostly, he was a man who perfected the art of perfectionism. What I mean when I say that is, Komla made sure that he practiced what he worked for in his profession so often that he made it look easy. He made the most difficult aspects of his professional life look effortless and easy. And I believe that example is the example that the BBC have taken up to set up the foundation for Africa Journalist of the Year, which is doing so well as an example for many, many other African journalists to follow. This book captures within it a large part of his work as a journalist at the BBC. It is a compendium of just about every trip that he made across the continent, presidents that he met, and his thoughts and feelings about those experiences that he went through during the course of his life as a journalist. It is interesting that Komla did so much writing and managed to find the time to put so many of his thoughts onto paper, when in fact he was doing this at the very same time that he had more or less dedicated his entire lifetime, awake time, to his work. So you would find that the book is almost like a collection of his tweets, but not quite as vacuous as the tweets of the American. If I was to describe Komla in a number of ways which this book captures, first and foremostly, he was a modern-day Pan-Africanist. And I mean by that Komla believed that Africa had so much more to achieve. And he believed that Africa was the first continent, the first man, the birthplace of civilization, and that we had to get back there one day. He was inspirational in that regard. And to that extent, he was politically very, very valuable as an asset to this country, which unfortunately we've lost. There are a lot of his thoughts as a Pan-Africanist in his tweets in this book, which are inspirational to the older generation, the middle generation, and the younger generation. And therefore, I recommend this book very much for that reason. He's also demonstrated from his thoughts just how much of a communicator, an effective communicator that he was. And therefore, anyone who is interested in going into that area of journalism and media would find a lot of his thoughts in here very, very helpful. He was also a very deep man, given to philosophical thoughts and musings. And in his moments of quietus, he did write some very touching and deep thoughts, which are very helpful for all of us. On the day of Lucky Dube's death, sudden death, he wrote a passage about how sad he was not to have gone to a concert of Lucky Dube's, which was held 2 days before in London. And he chose not to go out of dedication for his work the next morning at the BBC. As a result, he went home early, got to work, and the following day it was announced that Lucky Dube was tragically shot and killed just after he got back to South Africa. And this is what Komla, had to say about that, the philosophical Komla. The interview Freddie did at the concert set the tone for the memorial that I presented on the same show. We are just visitors in this world to enjoy the moments with the people who you love and who love you. Work hard, but make time for family and for true friends so that when you are gone, they will think of the good times and the stories from your journeys together. And that's typical Komla, the philosopher. And it's timeless and it's beautiful. So this would not just be a coffee book, but it will be a memento. It will be something which, when you miss the greatness of that great person, you open it, read a passage or two, and become re-inspired. It's a must-have to anybody who is a perfectionist and strives for self-improvement. And for that, I would say, Uncle, thank you very much. It's a must-have.
For me, his last few lines sums it up. Don't leave here without a book for yourself and for a friend. So everybody should buy at least 2 of each. Before we get to that portion, I'll go back to the Heavenly Chorale. Distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, at this point, we'll do the launch. But before we do the launch, the Heavenly Jewels Chorale will do the foundation song of the Komla Dumor Memorial Foundation. After which, we'll gladly ask Sir Sam Jonah to do us the honors of formally launching these 2 books, Komla Dumor and His Elements, and The Dreamer. Chorale. I want a bigger round of applause for the song. Please do it for me. It's the anthem of the Komla Dumor Memorial Foundation. Say some 1 minute, please. The reason why I want a bigger applause is I'll tell you. Just give me another applause for the song. Reason is that this song was actually put together by Komla Dumor's grandfather, revered, venerable, celebrated Philip Behu, his maternal grandfather. And I dare say, I'm not sure, but I'm just guessing, but I have a strong feeling I'm right. This song was put together before Komla was born. Prof, hello? Yeah. When they say do something because of the future, Sometimes we don't understand. The lyrics of the song were put together by J.B. Dankwa. The music by Philip Beho. I'm sure both of them will probably be sitting down and say, Philip, is that not your song? JB will be like, yeah, my words, my lyrics. Who are they playing it for? And then Philip will be like, my grandson. We're one people, at the end of the day. We're one people to a large extent. Ladies and gentlemen, a man who needs no introduction. Sir Sam Jonah is here.
Thank you, Kwame. On December 5th, 2013, we all woke up to the news of the passing of Nelson Mandela. It was a Friday. On a Saturday afternoon, I was minding my own business when I got a frantic telephone call from my son, Komla. Komla says, Daddy, I need a scoop. I'm outside the home of Mandela, and I want to be the first journalist to interview the family. Okay, Kobna, I'll come back to you. Inside 10 minutes, Kobna was in the home, and he was the first journalist to interview the family. After the funeral, Kobna flew here to join in the celebration of the mother's passing. On the flight was my son, Richard. Kobna was in 2A and Richard was in 2B. They had wonderful conversations, they tell me. When they got here, on the Sunday, Richard visited, and he told me of the wonderful discussions very stimulating discussions, he says, he had with his brother Kobna. The day after, Kobna also came home, and we had a wonderful chat, and he told me about his experience. He says he got to know his brother better on that flight. Well, on the 18th of January, tragically, I was in Cape Coast at the University of Cape Coast on official duties as Chancellor. In the afternoon, I got a frantic telephone call from my son, Richard. Dad, have you heard? Have you heard? I said, what is it? He said, I don't believe it. BBC is reporting that Kobna is gone. I said, Kobna? What are you talking about? So I immediately tried to get Monya. I tried desperately, I couldn't. And then, unfortunately, within a few minutes, I got confirmation that my son was gone, Kobna. That was on the 18th of January, 2014. On the 22nd of February, 2014, I also woke up to the news of the passing of my son, Richard. So here tonight, I'm united with Ernest in grief as we celebrate a true legend, Komla Dumor. And it is indeed my great pleasure, honor, and privilege for me to be asked to launch the books, The Dreamer, Komla Dumor, The Boss Player, and Komla Dumor in its elements. I recently turned 70, and when you turn 70, as Chachi will find soon, you come to appreciate that you become a bit more cynical when you receive invitations like this. Because as Kwame said, I was brought here because he expects me to offer some money. So I usually come up with very diplomatic reasons to be absent. But in the case of Kobna, I was determined to come up with every diplomatic reason to be here. So it is my pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, Kobna, as I said, was a legend and a true gentleman. He touched many lives. And in whatever role that we knew him, from whatever vantage position, Kobna stood apart as someone who was very special. I had a distinct pleasure of making his acquaintanceship when Kobna joined the flagship program of Joy, the morning show. My first encounter marked the beginning of a very long-standing relationship. To Kobna, I was privileged to be his uncle, his friend, and his mentor. Kobna, as we all know, was larger than life. He was charismatic. He was an innovative thinker. He was a visionary. And I have many fond memories of very long conversations I had with him over many years. I'm sure all of us here have similar experiences. To me, Kobna personified the very best values of his profession. As I said, he was innovative, he was a visionary, and he was endowed with tenacious patience, determination, empathy, and of course, moral clarity. Although Kobna's life was far too short, I can assure you, his was a life well lived. He had an immensely impactful career, and I confess with pride that on many occasions in my travels, whenever I'm introduced as a Ghanaian, one of the two names I'm almost invariably associated with is Komla Dumor of BBC and Asamoah. That is how impactful Kobna's life was. In all his work, Kobna was determined to change the narrative about the continent. No doubt, he was an endearing young man who utilized to the fullest his God-given gifts to seek to transform not only his country, but to change the narrative about the continent. He chose, Kobna, to walk the difficult path of those leaders of yesteryears who sought to restore our country and our continent to its dignity and glory. I had the privilege of writing the foreword to one of his books, The Dreamer, Komla Dumor, the boss player in his own words. And reading through the book, Kobna was a dreamer of a special kind. He was asking every one of us to have the courage to dream and to translate that dream into concrete reality. He dreamt about the accomplishments of our people and those in ancient times that had great ideas about the future. He engaged in a clarion call that we should begin breaking the chains that have held us back from what we have been destined to become. I see many things that we should celebrate. Kobna was a man in love with his country, Ghana, and the continent, Africa. He was a man of remarkable courage and heroic selflessness, way beyond compare. And as I've said earlier, he was obsessed with an overwhelming dream to change the narrative about our continent. Kobna made this his mission in life. In 2006, when Kobna joined the BBC African Service as a host of the network Africa on BBC Radio, Kobna found his calling. BBC gave Kobna the opportunity and the platform to tell the African story to a broader audience. As someone who was deeply obsessed about sharing the broader dimensions of the continent, ranging from politics, social matters, tourism, sports, and more, BBC was where he wanted to be. Kobna knew that BBC's platform, both on radio and television, was an opportunity to present to the world the true Africa, beyond the war and diseases that had almost defined us. Indeed, when Kobna was presented with an opportunity to join CNN, he refused to do so because he felt that CNN was not the focal point, Africa was not the focal point of that network. In Komla's own words, as demonstrated in this book, he said, and I quote, "I met with some folks at CNN, but I won't leave the A-list at BBC to become a B-lister at CNN. Their style of TV news simply lacks depth. Coverage of Africa is a total joke. Inside Africa this week was about a female rollerblading club in Cape Town. Are you kidding me?" Kobna asked. This tells us a lot about the kind of person my son Kobna was. He was a true patriot and wanted to tell the real African story to the world. In spite of his many achievements, and although he hobnobbed with the international creme de la creme, Komla was easily available to those who would describe as ordinary. He was a man consumed with simplicity in living and humility. He saw his profession, journalism, as a calling and as a vocation. So in his practice and writings, he defined a personal ethical compass to guide him, and thus made him operate within the law. Komla firmly and resolutely stood for the principles and values that now appear to be on the retreat. All these things I have mentioned and many more run through the two books, including Komla Dumor in its elements, where you see journalism at its very best. I am happy to have the opportunity to launch these two books, and I urge everyone to pay attention to all the critical issues that Komla raised, the obstacles he faced, and the heroic courage he displayed while working in an environment that would appear unfamiliar to most of us here. There are two projects the foundation intends to promote. As Auntie Mary said, cardiac health for young professionals and the Komla Dumor Institute for Broadcast Journalism, which will largely create a new class of African journalists. Journalists who work tirelessly to help unlock the potential of the African continent and indeed our lovely country, Ghana. Today, ladies and gentlemen, Komla is not here, but Komla's dream lives on. Thank you all, and may Komla continue to live in our hearts and minds. Thank you. I now officially launch the two books. Thank you very much.